All right, fantastic, fantastic. Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, depending on when you're coming to this broadcast. But thank you all for joining us. This is Curtis Webster, the founder of Dad's Married to Doctors. Thank you for joining us on this Giving Tuesday. We are right after a few days after Thanksgiving, and it was definitely a different Thanksgiving here in November 2020. So I have some phenomenal guests on the show today, like I'm already on the podcast, but but excited to have a dual physician couple with us today. They're known collectively as semi-retired MD, but let me introduce you all to Kenji and Leti.
Hey everyone.
Hello.
Thanks for having us on, Curtis.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank y'all for joining me. Thank y'all so much for joining me. I know Kenji, you've actually been around the DMD group for a little while now, right?
Yep, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. And then Leti, I actually didn't even ask. I'm already assuming you're part of PMG.
I am. Yeah, for like 4 or 5 years at least.
Okay, so almost
Wow.
since the beginning then.
Mhm.
That is awesome. That is awesome. And now, how did you originally find out about PMG, Leti?
No idea, actually. I really don't. I must have been, I think once I had a baby, somebody probably invited me.
I think in the early days it was pretty much invite only, right? Because I think it was
I
even
think so.
secret and you could just kind of find it on your own,
Hmm.
if I remember. And then Kenji, I know you've been around for a few years as well. Did you hear about it about DMD through Leti, or did a friend of yours invite you, or did you just find us?
That's a good question. I think I just was just looking for different communities, and so I think I came across your group, and so it was, being a physician and stay-at-home dad, is kind of a perfect thing for me. So
That's awesome. You know,
yeah,
something I talk about all the time is the need for community. And I
right.
remember where I was 6 years ago. We were just finishing up with residency. We were moving back into North Carolina, building a brand new house, which is going to be. I totally have some questions for you since we're going to be talking about real estate. But building a brand new house from the ground up, which is a great decision for folks who have never owned a home before, right? Why not just jump
Hmm.
jump in
Amazing.
head first? But building a house from the ground up, two kids in tow. We knew we were going to get pregnant with our third, so a new baby coming along. I'm doing IT consulting in between working part time and then working full time like I do now, and all the craziness. I quickly realized, as I'm sure y'all probably have, that there's got to be some other folks that understand how to best live this physician lifestyle, what we call the DMD lifestyle. So
Yeah, for sure.
I know
Yeah.
community has been amazing for me, and it sounds like it has been for you all too.
Hmm. Yeah,
So,
definitely.
Yeah,
so
we really formed our community, our real estate community, for that reason. Is that we were doing it alone for a long time, and so having other people who are like-minded, similar backgrounds, it's been awesome.
Hmm.
no, that's phenomenal. And actually, no, let's do that for those that don't know you. If y'all can start at the beginning, how you met, what you ended up, what specialties you both have and have trained in, your kids, and then yeah, what got you to the point of starting to look for secondary income stream.
Okay. Yeah. Awesome. So actually, Kenji and I are both hospitalists, but I trained in family medicine and he trained in internal medicine. And he's 9 years older than me. So I actually met him when I was a fellow in hospital medicine and he was my attending. Well, actually, I
Nice.
met him when I was an intern, but really got to work with him when I was a fellow a lot more. And so we met in the hospital and then we were married in 2014.
Hmm.
Yeah. And for the real estate, I mean, what really happened was we very early on, actually maybe 6 months before we got married, Kenji asked me this question, which I'd actually never been asked before, as odd as that sounds. But he said, "How do you want to live your life?" And I was describing this path, that we were on, and he said, "No. If you had complete freedom, if money didn't matter, how would you spend your time? What would you do?" And that was a really different question. And it led me to give him a very different answer.
Right.
And I described living in Italy. I described having a farmhouse with a giant table and hosting people, growing my own olives. I mean, it was a totally different path than we were on. We were both full-time hospitalist physicians. He had a company too. So he was, a full-time doc plus a company, plus I was helping with the company, plus I was full-time. And it was crazy. And when we kind of thought about that, we didn't know how to get there. at all. And it took us about 6 months, about 6 months later, we were actually in New Zealand going around in camper van. We read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And so
Nice.
then we put it together because I think we were both like searching, like, how do we get to the point where we don't have to work every single day at a hospital and we're not stuck in living in one place? But we
Right.
didn't know how. And when we read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, we realized the key was cash flow. And the key was to have monthly income coming in from somewhere else so we could decouple our time from money. And once we
Right.
realized that, like, we just went all in. We were like, were literally looking for a primary residence in Seattle. We had put in bids. We went on that vacation. We're like, we're real estate investors. We don't need a primary residence. We took all our money that we had as a down payment. We went out and started buying duplexes. We like went all in that year, and we still don't own
Wow.
a primary residence. Like this is a rental that we live in. And we put all our money into it. We had Kenji cut back to half time in medicine because we wanted to get real estate professional tax status because we realized how much those tax savings would change like our finances. So we
Right.
actually had him cut down that first year and sheltered all of our income from income taxes, which really helped fuel our growth.
That's so awesome. Wow. Wow. That's a whirlwind of the last 6 years. Now, and then if I remember correctly, y'all have 2 young kids, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. We literally, I mean, yeah, it was crazy. We had our little baby. We were hauling her around to look at rehab projects. I mean, we did a house flip. House hacking experience where we bought this property. We turned it into like a duplex that was really nice, and it took
Right.
us like maybe 6 or 8 months to really fully rehab it. We had a contractor, and I remember we took her around to all these like inspections. We took her into there. We lived, above the rehab project. And we just did it. I can't say it was always easy, but if you just decide that something's possible, you just find a way. So yeah, we have a 5-year-old and a almost 3-year-old now.
Yeah. And then, I mean, I think it was great. It was great. I went from halftime and then I cut down to just moonlighting pretty quickly, just because we were getting cash flow from our rentals. We were also got the tax savings. So it really paid for me to cut back. And so, yeah, I mean, basically being a stay-at-home dad, I would have the days to go out and, like Leti was saying, like carry the baby, go to construction site, meet contractors, meet agents, those types of things. And it was great. It was great to be able to get out and do those things during the middle of the day
Right.
instead of kind of being, stuck in the hospital, 7 to 7, right? So
yeah, it was crazy. He literally carried our first baby everywhere.
everywhere.
He would come up to the hospital, he'd bring her,
Yeah.
he'd be typing, waiting for me.
Right.
It was just crazy.
Yeah.
She got held a lot of her life the first 2 years.
Yeah, for sure.
But you know what I think is most amazing about that is most people, and myself included, there was a period of time where I would use the kids as an excuse. I would say, you know what, I got the young kids. I need to provide that, stable environment. Let me keep them at the house. Oh, it's too dangerous to have them around a construction site, and I would use some of those different excuses. I'm sure other people have done the same thing, but I love the fact that y'all didn't let the excuses hold you back. I love the fact that y'all had that, as they talk about singleness of purpose. Once you got clear as to how you wanted to create that avenue. And even more so, we actually talk about this in DMD Plus, our extra community for guys that want to be strategic about their growth, about what is it that you ultimately want to accomplish. And so many of us don't stop long enough to not only ask our spouses that, but even ask ourselves. We get into that daily grind, right? So let's go all the way back to Kenji when you were an attending. Leti, when you were a fellow, y'all were just meeting and hitting it off and everything else. Kenji, I guess you were an attending and running another business at that time?
Right. Yeah, exactly. It was a startup, and it was a company that I started with somebody else.
No doubt. So already busy, and I guess no kids at that point, right? Just use.
Well, Kenji actually had.
Yeah, I have a 17-year-old.
Okay, but still though, so you had other responsibilities, working, 2 different jobs. So that just blows my mind that there's all those different things going on, and yet you're still looking for these other opportunities and realizing that there's other things out there. And it sounds like you were already at a point, Kenji, where you were already kind of making or getting into that mindset that there had to be more. It sounded like you were already looking for something else.
Yeah, I think it's I think kind of what the nature of my question, the reason why I asked it, right, was I really wanted to kind of get on the same page. And I think for a long time, I was thinking to myself, that, that, yeah, I really wanted to live a life without those limitations, right?
Right.
I wanted more than just how much I could earn uh, based on the number of hours I could work, right? So,
There you go.
so yeah, so really, I wanted to, one way I think about it is a sports analogy. Like I wanted to stop playing defense all my life. I wanted to play offense and run up the score if I wanted to, right? And
I love it.
so, and that's really kind of where it came from. And yeah, I had that mentality kind of early on. Now, I didn't implement that necessarily. I was trying all these different things. I was working a startup. I had been doing real estate for many, many years,
Okay.
but I hadn't really implemented a really kind of solid plan until we got together. Some of that was the discipline that she, gave me. I was kind of investing in a lot of kind of, higher risk type of appreciation plays.
Right.
And so when we got together, it was like, okay, we need a really solid strategy. And then together we created these really awesome goals, kind of like you're doing in DMD Plus,
Right.
creating that vision, that goals, knowing exactly what we want to achieve. And like you said, that's the reason why, I didn't, we got through all those, we have the same tendency, create those excuses, but we got, busted through those excuses and just executed and just made it happen.
I love that. I love that. And I'm looking at the chat here, and I see folks have some questions, and we're going to jump into talking about more of the specific real estate questions. And for those that are just joining us, we're sitting here chatting with a couple behind semi-retired MD, and what we're going to be talking about is not only their DMD lifestyle and how they work their business and being a physician, being physicians, a dual physician household, but also how what got them to the point of investing in real estate and how they're able to really leverage that to give themselves options. Being semi-retired, fully retired, you have that choice. You can decide how you want to leverage that. So let's talk about that first property. I know, Kenji, you were just talking about you were already you know exposed to the real estate world, but when you all got together, sounds like you very early on in the marriage, got pregnant, started having kids, and it sounds like y'all were already reading that book, already realizing real estate was the answer. So what was, can you give me the background and the story behind that first or second property?
Yeah. Can I
Yeah.
do it?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So, we had read a book. We had Kenji's experience of investing in like mostly raw land and high appreciation,
Like
like
condos.
condos.
Yeah.
And so we kind of knew what we were doing, but we really didn't. And so what we did was we went to our residential guy who was helping us, our agent who was trying to help us find a primary residence.
Right.
And we said, hey, we're real estate investors now. We're building an empire. Like, we don't need a primary residence, but you can help us find investment properties. And he had no idea what we were talking about. He had no idea what an investment, what was a good investment property. So we're like, okay, well, we're not going to cash flow in Seattle. So we need to go looking outside of Seattle. Okay. And keep in mind, this
Yeah.
guy's, primary focus is helping people find their homes in Seattle.
Their
Okay.
dream
So
home,
we're
right?
dragging him like an hour and a half north to look at this. Like, I remember one of the earliest ones we looked at a duplex right next to a cement factory. And we had read in the book, make ridiculously low offers. So we would just go in and be like, hey, we want to pay, 50,000 or 100,000 less. What do you think? And so we were getting declined left and right. And we didn't really understand it fully. But luckily we eventually found a investor real estate agent. So somebody who really understood investments and also owned her own investments.
Nice.
And that really
There you
helped
go.
us because now we had our knowledge from the books, and then we had somebody on our side who actually had the right connections and then also understood, not to the actually level that we understand now and have a whole system. And she didn't understand the taxes, but
Right.
she understood what would be a good buy. And she had invested in small multifamily too. So we
Wow.
started out that way. So we actually went and picked up 2 duplexes at the same time once we found her. Like, we just put in offers. I mean, we were aggressive. And so we picked up 2 duplexes, both south of Seattle, about 45 minutes. And one was like 176,000, one was like 214,000. And we actually didn't initially fix them up, but we fixed them up within a year or two, and just like, they went from renting, 750 all the way up to like 1,300.
Nice.
And it was massive. I mean, the amount of value we added to them and their cash flow, it was awesome. So we started off with 2 duplexes at the same time.
That's amazing. Now let me ask you this, and then folks that are leaving some questions. These are some great questions. I see some folks are asking about where you started, where how you picked your locations. So we'll get into those in just a moment. But with the fact that you all chose cash flowing rentals, and we're going to talk about your upcoming program. And actually, folks, if you want to even just get on the waiting list and get some more information, you can go to dadsmarriedtodoctors.com/semi-retired MD, all together, no hyphens. But when you all were getting started, you read Cash Flow Quadrant. That was his follow-up book. You
Yeah,
read
that's right.
Rich Dad Poor Dad. How did you decide or hone in on doing the long-term cash flow rentals versus flipping versus the wholesaling or some of the other things? You were talking about condos and duplexes. Why not the single families? How did you all hone in on those the particular area that you seem to focus on now?
Yeah, so in the book Rich Dad Poor Dad, I think one of the key kind of points that Robert Kiyosaki makes is that what you want to do is you want to accumulate assets, and he defines assets as something that puts money in your pocket. And that very kind of simple concept, when applied to rental properties or real estate investing in general, is that you want to buy properties that are putting cash in your pocket every month, and that's really the foundation of cash flowing rentals. And that's why that's what we ended up focusing on. That's that strategy I was telling you about. I was pursuing all these different strategies. Many of the ones that you just mentioned, I was pursuing them and I tried them out. And ultimately realized after all that experience, but also sitting down with Leti and going, okay, we need to pick a strategy and stick with it.
Right.
And that strategy was cash flowing rentals. But then, as what Leti was saying, was that as we kind of invested in more and more cash flowing rentals, we discovered that, number one, that you can add that cash flow is actually not even the main component of return. Your tax savings can be even actually bigger than your cash flow. On top
Nice.
of that, if you do something called forced appreciation, and what that is you control the appreciation, how much a property appreciates by increasing the cash flow of that property, we realize that that is actually the real source of value. So if you can
Yeah.
buy this $176,000 duplex, and in 12 to 18 months, you can sell that duplex for 350, 375,000, because you force the appreciation by increasing the rents so dramatically.
Right.
That's how you kind of really grow your wealth quickly. And that's kind of one of the things that we realized over the years, that the foundation is cash flowing rentals. But then on top of that, you get debt pay down, the renter's paying down your mortgage.
Yes.
And then on top of that, you get the tax savings. And then on top of that, you get the forced appreciations. When you combine all those things together, like we said, you can grow your wealth very quickly. And for us, what we were able to do was in 3.5 years, we were able to achieve financial freedom.
I love that. You hear these stories and you see that kind of stuff, and just to think that you can be one of those success stories, and that's why I'm so excited about y'all's course that's coming up, and we'll talk about that here in just a moment. So let's look at some of these questions. Somebody was asking about the city where your rentals are at, and I know you already mentioned y'all were in Seattle at the time. You already realized that due to, I guess, the high housing cost, that it didn't make sense to get your rentals there. So do y'all just have them outside of Seattle? Are they all over the country? Are they all over the world? Where do you pick your properties?
Yeah, so we started in 2015, so we could still find deals about an hour to an hour and a half out of Seattle that cash flowed, and we had kind of set our criteria as we wanted to achieve 10% cash on cash return. And
Okay.
so we have this little calculator, we'd plug in all the numbers and we would say, okay, this property is currently performing at 1% cash on cash, but we can see that there's under market rents. We can see there's a garage we can rent. We can see if we fix it up, we're going to be able to actually get these rents. And so we could see that potential of each property, because it's kind of rare that you find a property that's just performing really well, that's at a reasonable price, that somebody, just wants to sell at that reasonable price.
Right.
Usually it's crazy marked up. So you have to see that hidden value is what we call it. So yes, so we would buy properties that needed work, like an hour, hour and a half outside of Seattle, and fix them up and then increase the value, like Kenji said. And then when Donald Trump did the CARES Act in 2017,
Right.
he implemented something called 100% bonus depreciation. And that actually was what really kind of changed us from purely buy and hold, buy a property, hold it for 10, 15 years, just sit on the cash flow, to be more aggressive about turning over our properties and
Okay.
1031 exchanging them into bigger and bigger properties. Because, before that, there was regular depreciation, flatline depreciation, which you would write off roughly 1/27th of the value of the property as a loss. It's a phantom loss every year on your taxes.
Right.
So, let's say we bought a $100,000 property, we'd be writing off like $5,000 of it every single year as a loss, right? Well, with 100% bonus depreciation, the numbers got much, much bigger for the amount of
Right.
losses we could create. And so the rough back of the envelope, what we think about when we see a property is about a quarter of what the purchase price is going to be, what we can write off in our taxes the first year. So just
Oh,
a
no
rough
doubt.
envelope. So actually we just this year turned 3 of our small properties into a down payment on a $3 million 32 unit. And that in itself generates $750,000 in a tax shelter for us. And then we're rehabbing it, and that's a write-off too. So now we're in the situation where we're literally, getting a tax shelter, rehabbing it and adding value and getting that to write off. And then now it's worth, probably 2 million more after we're done with this in the next year. And then we'll be able to do it again.
There you
And
go.
so it's just become, insane taking these little tiny properties that we started 5 years ago with, and just going bigger and bigger and bigger. And each time harvesting these tax savings that make us pay no income tax that we then feed right back in.
It was the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, actually, not the CARES Act in 2017.
Oh,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. It's interesting because, you hear folks talk about, these loopholes and all these folks know how to get around the system and so on and so forth. But the system was designed like any other system where you can make it work in your favor. And I think what's great is there's opportunities to do that. And if you don't know how to do it, that you all are making yourselves available to teach people how to do so. So somebody asked the question, especially with these, the back of the envelope value that you're looking at, or even being able to tap into some of those. Do you have to be that real estate professional to do that, or can you still tap into some of those different tax savings?
Yeah, so there are a lot of great tax benefits in real estate. Not just, you don't have to be a real estate professional. I think the easiest example is if you were to earn, let's say, half of your income. Let's say your spouse makes, I don't know, let's say they even cut back and make $150,000 W-2, and then you get $150,000 in cash flow. Well, first of all, that cash flow is tax-free, right? So you're actually that's more equivalent to actually making about a little over $200,000 of W-2 income. But let's just forget that part. But let's say you're making $150,000 in tax-free cash flow. That's 0%. And then $150,000 in W-2 combined, you have $300,000. But you've just cut your tax rate in half, because this half is paid at you don't pay any taxes on this half.
Right.
So that's one way. Another way is, as we were saying, if you can still force appreciate, which is still the biggest component of return. If you can force that appreciation, and then 1031, which is a mechanism for you to defer the taxes to a later date. So when we took those 3 properties, sold them, and bought this $3 million property, all the gains from those 3 properties, we were able to actually put into the next property without paying taxes on them, without paying capital gains tax, because we're deferring that tax to a later date when we sell that last property. Now, this is also cool for those people who are trying to create generational wealth. If you keep 1031ing and you never sell that last property and your kids inherit it, they inherit the value of the property at the time you die, not the value that you paid for it. And all that accumulated gain, they don't have to pay taxes on that. They actually inherit it at the value that it was when you died. And so it's a real benefit in terms of passing along generational wealth.
Yeah, I want to add to that a little bit. The reason Kenji's saying that cash flow from your real estate is generally tax-free, even if you don't have real estate professional tax status, is it's actually a business. So just like any other business, you have so many write-offs you can take. So you're taking the flat line depreciation every single year, which is significant. You're taking things like travel, like if you're traveling to that location, like a lot of our students will buy out of state, they'll buy in Vegas, or they'll buy in places that they have family. And so when they're traveling to see their properties, they're writing that off as a cost. They're writing off things like meals, or like we just bought a Tesla X And we
Nice.
wrote it off of our business because we're using it 100% for business.
There you
And
go.
so there are so many things that you actually can like shift the costs of. Home office is another one that you can write off your rental. But even without those kind of extra write-offs, the depreciation is often enough to mostly shelter any income you're going to make from your real estate. So you will be putting money in your pocket every month, but you will not be paying taxes on that money generally.
I love it. I love it. I love it. So
Oh, one more thing I want
yeah,
to say also, sorry,
no, I love
is
this. I
a
love
lot of
this.
people, a lot of people feel guilty about loopholes and not paying taxes, but we've actually done the numbers and the amount we pay in property taxes now, and then also the amount of
Right.
people we support with their jobs, like property managers,
Yeah.
contractors, they're paying taxes on the money we're paying them. And actually, we are paying more in taxes when you add all that up than if we were both working full time. So that's why the government makes all these loopholes, because they want to encourage you to be a business owner and they want you to provide housing for people because they're not in the business of providing housing for people.
Right. Well, and even when they do try, it's not always the best, right? It's not
Right.
always done as effectively
Exactly.
as it could be. No, I love that, and I love that you mentioned that because, like you said, a lot of times folks want to act like they're going to feel bad or oh, you're taking advantage, but no, it's there for a reason, and you want to make sure you're making it work for you. And then, like you just pointed out, not only are you all able to pay that same tax or even less than what you would have been paying, you're able to put it into people's pockets that are able to now be better off because of what you're doing by owning a business. So let's talk about that. Folks like myself, my wife and I, 7 years post residency, paying off, bills, 3 years from knocking out her student loans, three kids, middle school and under, my oldest is 7 years from college, and or however many years from marriage, if I ever let her out of the house. All these different, bills, all these life complications. But through your course, what is it, Zero to Freedom?
Through cash flowing rentals.
Zero to Freedom through cash flowing rentals. You can take somebody like me working all the time. My wife works nights and weekends. We, are paying on our primary residence because we hadn't gotten into the whole real estate game yet. And you can take somebody like me and teach me how to go from where I'm at to hopefully at some point where y'all are.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. I mean, it sounds like not even a challenge.
No, that's not fair.
I love it. I love it.
I mean,
Yes.
ultimately it depends on you.
Right.
I mean, what you heard from us is we had a very clear why we wanted to invest in real estate. We had a very clear vision of where we wanted to be. And actually what we said is we want to replace both our clinical incomes in 7 years. That was where we're going. We were completely aligned on it and we made a ton of sacrifices. I mean, we didn't get a primary residence. We used all of our money for this. Every time we would think about getting a new car, I'd be like, do you want to buy a new car or do you want to buy a cash flowing duplex that's going to make us $10,000 a year? Those kind of choices were choices we made all the time. And we house hacked in a neighborhood that my parents actually lived with us for part of the year. And they were like, this is the worst place we've ever lived. So we house hacked. We didn't, I mean, it wasn't without sacrifice, but we were so focused. So if you are focused and you know where you're going and you'll know why, you will get yourself there. All you need is the knowledge and the community and, so proximity is power is something we often say. It's like the people you're around are the people who are going to influence you and the people you're going to be. And so if you're in the right community with people aiming higher and dreaming bigger, it will also force you to level up.
Yeah, I mean, just to give you an example, one of our students actually just went out and bought a 60-unit apartment complex. And we're just like, before that, it was 40 units was the most that somebody had bought. I think it was actually somewhere 3 to 6 months after taking our course. They built up their portfolio up to 40 units. And then this one just went and got a 60 unit. So, I mean, it just,
but it's not us, it's them.
Yeah,
it really is.
That's exactly right. They know what they're looking to accomplish. And so I'm looking at the messages here, and Chris, our fitness trainer, Chris Gooden, is saying, sign me up. So folks that want to definitely get on the waiting list because they're going to launch this program end of December. Is that right?
We the waitlist sale is December 12th and 13th, and then the regular sale is the 14th through the 20th. And then as soon as people sign up, they actually get a pre-course. And
right.
our course is focused on making progress. So the pre-course has a bunch of steps you actually start doing right away.
We give you homework.
Yeah, I saw that.
Start
Yes.
like creating a business email. You choose your market you're going to invest in. Like you start making decisions, because those
That's awesome.
decisions move you forward. You make progress, you get encouraged, and you keep going. And you don't get stuck in analysis paralysis, which is what we've seen people do for years, right?
No, exactly. My wife and I, we've been talking about getting into real estate for a while now. And like you said, we get stuck on the paralysis. We get stuck on, well, should we use any money we save and knock out debt, or should we go ahead and start creating, good debt, which actually somebody asked a question about that. So we'll get to that in a moment. But dadsmarriedtodoctors.com/semi-retired MD. That will use our DMD code to get you onto their waiting list. And if you join their waiting list prior to the 12th, I believe it is, you actually get an additional $300 credit towards the cost of the course.
Mhm.
So somebody did ask two couple questions for you, and then we'll talk about the course and we'll wrap it up. Somebody asked about if you are dealing with multiple different properties all at the same time and you're getting those multiple mortgages, does that, or how does that affect your credit? And is credit even a consideration in real estate?
Yeah, no, credit's important. There's no question, but it doesn't, it doesn't hurt your credit. I mean, people always ask the question, well, if I have all that debt, can I keep getting loans, right? How does that look? And
Right.
so this is actually where your team member, one of your team members in particular, you want to have a investor-friendly lender, a lender who is not your residential lender, somebody who's going to help you get a loan for your house, but somebody who's like, okay, you're on your 8th investment loan. Okay, no big deal, right? Somebody who understands that this is what investors do. You can actually get 10 loans each. So if you're.
So when we started out,
Yeah.
I told you we were like
Aggressive.
100% into
Yeah.
this. We started out with loans in only one of our names. I got up to 7 loans, I think, and he got up to 4 or 5.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Wow.
we did it that way because we knew we were gonna, go big.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So you would definitely want to get an investor-friendly lender who knows how to look at those numbers and understands. Okay, here's a lot of debt. Here's the debt, but you have all this rental income offsetting that debt, right?
Right.
Paying for that debt. So it essentially nullifies. And when you go to when they take your application to the underwriter, they're like, they explain this to them, and then your loan goes through because they don't see that debt as, like you were saying, it's not bad debt. It's good debt. It's debt that's covered by rental income, and that cash flow again is more than enough to cover that debt because you have a margin there. One other thing I wanted to say is that since you're force appreciating, right? You're forcing that appreciation. The value of your properties is going up significantly, but the debt stays the same, right? So actually, the amount of equity you have in your property is growing,
Right.
and relative to the debt, your debt is, in essence, getting smaller relative to the equity that's building up. So again, you're not really in a situation where you're just drowning in debt. You're
That's
actually
right.
relative to your net worth, your debt is actually getting smaller.
Yeah, and then
Love that.
once you start buying properties 5 units and above, you kind of switch to commercial loans. And the performance, whether or not you're going to get a commercial loan is largely based on the performance of the property, not as much on you. They still
Okay.
take you into account. So, at that point, you're more freed up to actually get bigger and bigger properties. But yeah, I think when you're first starting out, especially having a residential lender in your corner who is able to also, make arguments about how, like, I remember Kenji wasn't working, right? And our lender would say, well, he's got all these properties under his name having this much cash flow, like that's like income for him. So that's just a different way of thinking.
Oh, that's right. That's right. And then we had somebody else in the comments asking about Section 8 housing. So we were talking about offsetting, or trying to help the government with their job of providing for the citizens. So have you all ever done anything with Section 8 housing or low income?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, we've had some, we currently have some Section 8 housing tenants, and especially in this environment, although I will say, even with COVID, there has not been a significant drop in rental collections. There's been some problems, small problems here and there. But overall, I'd say the majority of our tenants are paying.
Mm-hmm.
But the Section 8 tenants, they're definitely paying because a lot of their a lot of their rent is subsidized.
Right.
And not only that, not just Section 8, but we also provide housing for a special group called, it's a supported living program for people with intellectual disabilities. And so it's been really great to be able to provide housing for that population. And not only that, actually, it's actually very great, very good in terms of returns. One of our properties generates a 40% return. So we invested $46,000 in a $160,000 property, and it generates $20,000 in cash flow a year, that one property. And so we'll pay off that investment in 2.5 years, or we've already paid it off by now.
Yeah, we have already paid it off.
Man, I love it. So let me let you all kind of open up and talk about the course. Let's talk about who it's for. Let's talk about the because it's 8 weeks, right? An 8-week course with, like you said, active modules. It's not just watching videos and be like, oh, that was some great information. It's active, hands-on course. So let's talk about the course, who it's for. Also, a question for you, because I know you all are obviously doing this as a couple. Is that your recommendation for folks to make sure they're on board with their spouses for this? Can they do it themselves, especially if the spouse doesn't fully understand or see where they're trying to go? So let's talk about that, the course, and the timeline.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, I'll address the first one, which is, should you do it if your spouse, absolutely. If your spouse is on board, I think getting aligned on your goals and where you're going is actually in module 1. And so a lot of people, actually, we've had experienced real estate investors join our course just to get their spouse on board.
That's awesome.
And they'll go through it together. And we actually encourage spouses to come in and, just use the same login. And we let both partners into the Facebook community because we want spouses to be involved. Now, that being said, we have a lot of students whose spouses do not want to be involved or are actively against it, and the students still sign up. A lot. Now, I know your group is all men, but we have a lot of single women physicians, especially. They just sign up. They, their husbands don't come, or they're single by choice, and they do the course themselves. And we have a number of women who have now built significant portfolios. I mean, themselves, and with kids and full-time jobs. It's totally possible.
Yeah, and then the other thing I wanted to add to that was that since it's both couples, a lot of times it's the non-physician that is actually the one who's most involved, because they're the one who's going to be a real estate professional. So I think that's also kind of a cool dynamic, is that sometimes you do have a couple, you can have dual physician or one physician and a non-physician, and then we do have a small subset of people who are non-physicians, in general. So a lot of other high-income professionals, but it adds a really cool dynamic, whether it's a lawyer or accountant. They kind of really add a lot to the group. And then, so in terms of the course, like you said, it's an 8-week course. A lot of it's video-based, where we record modules, and we release each week, one module a week.
Right.
And what's cool about that, and the reason why we do it that way, is that we want to kind of have everybody go through the course together, be on the same material every week, because we supplement that with a weekly Q&A that we do. And it's a live Q&A. People come in, ask questions just like this. But usually it's kind of, we pull somebody up and we kind of do one-on-one when they ask the question. And then on top of that, we also have a community it's a special course community that we create in Facebook. And we're in there every day. And on top of that, we also have hired coaches who are former students who have really excelled, and they're doing really great things.
Nice.
And we also have about 15 to 20 mentors who are also former students, who volunteering their time to help out other members. And what's really cool about that is that, these people have just kind of either finished the course or they've completed the course, maybe over a year ago. They're investing, and they're going through the same path you went through. So literally you can ask them these questions about, hey, what did you do about asset protection? I'm thinking about this vendor, right? Or I'm looking at this market. I see that you are also investing in this market. Can you maybe help me out with a contractor? And so, we create these communities, much like your community, where people are, there's some communities out there that aren't helpful, right? They're people are not thinking abundantly, right? But our communities, one of the things we really stress is abundance, right? Thinking about, if you help somebody today, they're more likely to help you out later when you
That's
need
right.
that help, right? And so that's kind of the community that we create. And not only is there a big course community, but we also have team investing groups. These are small groups that we form around certain markets. So you can get really deep dive into a certain market. And so that's another layer of support that we provide for people, especially for people who are going to be investing long distance, right? People on the coasts, they might invest in a cash flowing market, like let's say Oklahoma City, and they don't know anybody there. And so it's really scary if you don't know anybody in a city and you're investing a lot of money. And so that's why we create these communities of people who are both local, but also people who are investing in those markets from long distance, just like you are.
Yeah, our students, last time I counted, was 93 markets they're
That's
investing in
amazing.
across the country.
Yeah. So it's very likely you're going to find somebody who's
Yeah.
already in the market, who could help you out, who can help you build your team. One of the big things about our course is not just the material, but every week, right? As you make progress, part of that progress is building your team. And so we're going to introduce you to investor-friendly lender,
Right.
investor-friendly insurance broker, investor agents, and we help you kind of fill out your team so that by the time you're ready to put in that offer on a property, you already have your team in place and you're ready to go.
See, I love the fact that you kind of have everything from start to finish. Like I said, you already have the community. You have the opportunity for folks to get with you all in the live Q&As, which I've already sat in on a couple of those. And like you said, that's kind of what we're doing now.
Cool.
So I love that you don't just you're just not off as these, folks that have made it, but you're coming back in and making yourselves available to the community. And you've even built these even smaller, more intimate communities for folks to be able to tackle these issues with folks right there on the ground. I saw that you had one right here in Raleigh, North Carolina. My wife and I were actually talking about, like you said, with COVID, looking at going ahead and getting that vacation property on the coast. So how cool is it that we can look and see if you have somebody over there in Myrtle Beach or Charleston or whatever else, and be able to talk with folks that know that specific market to point us in a good direction. We don't have to wing it.
Right.
For sure.
And actually, that's a great point that you bring up short-term rentals, because short-term rentals, you can actually write off the tax benefits without having real estate professional tax status. So like we just bought a short-term rental, and the rules are that we need to spend at least 100 hours on it or be the primary people who do the most amount of work on it on the calendar year.
Okay.
And so we're doing that. We're self-managing for the month of December because we just bought it and it's being rehab, and we're going to be able to do that bonus depreciation, write off the rehab, write off furnishing it. And actually, even if we didn't have real estate professional, we'd be able to write that off of our income. It's a big deal with short-term rentals.
Yeah.
Big deal.
That's huge. No, I'm loving that because, like I said, this is something my wife and I have talked about. And so those of you guys, especially as we wrap up here, if you visit dadsmarriedtodoctors.com/semi-retired MD, all together is one word, that will take you to get onto the waiting list. So you'll be ready to launch when they get started here in just the next couple of weeks. But I love that you can take folks, like I said, like my wife and I, that are brand new. We've been thinking about it. Let me ask you this, and we'll start to go ahead and wrap it up. We were talking with a friend and they said, you know what, we're not going to do a 529. We're not going to just do a general savings account to get our kids ready for college or, weddings or whatever else. What they said was, we're going to take care of our kids through real estate. He said, I'm going to go out, I'm going to find a house, I'm going to get a, $100,000 house, and then let it appreciate over the next, 18 years, 15 years, whatever. And then when that kid comes of age, boom, sell it or whatever. You got this nice chunk of change. You can do whatever you'd like to with it. We always wondered, okay, is that a good option? And how can we do something like that? And it sounds like enrolling in your course will actually take us, from idea through all the steps to do that.
Yeah, I would say so. But we would teach you how to buy a cash flowing rental, not bet on appreciation.
Yeah.
And you would probably still get market appreciation, but you'd make money in the meantime. And so, yeah, we don't fund 529s. We actually stopped funding our 401ks except for match because of the same thing. We realized we could make so much more money on real estate plus the tax savings. It just didn't make sense for us to fund those things anymore. So
well, the other thing that we talk about is we call it money jail, right? Is that you're willingly putting your money in jail, and I know that I don't want to kind of bash these things because I think there's a lot of merits to it. There's some tax savings, a lot of good tax savings. It's a good tax savings vehicle. But with that said, I think the thing that a lot of people may have realized with COVID is that at the end of the day, a great rate of return in your 401k doesn't pay the bills, right? If you are furloughed and you need money for medical bills, food, housing, right? It doesn't matter that your 401k is growing at 30%, right? That's not going to help you, right? Only
Right.
thing that's going to help you is if you have cash that you can use to live on. And that's it's actually how we funded a year off. We took a year off to travel
Amazing.
because we wanted to travel while we were still young and with our young kids. And we just we lived, we could use the cash flow to pay for travel, right? So, and that's an option that you would have if you had that money coming in every month.
I love that. I was looking at one of your taglines, and I see you say you're on a mission to help fellow physicians and high income professionals achieve financial freedom while they're still young enough to enjoy it.
Yeah, that's right.
I love, and I think that's the key. A lot of folks talk about the financial independence and the financial freedom, but then they don't talk about the retire early part of it, right? The fire piece. So I
Right.
love that. So as we wrap up, how can folks find you? I know you all have a podcast. You have an amazing website with all kinds of great articles. So where can folks find you and learn more to see what all you're doing?
Yeah, I think the best place is really the, semi-retiredmd.com is probably the best place. And from there you can kind of get to our podcast or, contact us, those types of things. So yeah, just find us there. And
Or our Facebook communities too.
Facebook communities. Yeah, we have, some Facebook communities, again, focused on real estate and real estate questions. We have public communities, and then we have some private ones for our course that is just for the people taking our course.
That's awesome. Well, Kenji, Leti, I really appreciate you all taking the time to share your knowledge and expertise with us. For those of you all that want to dive in deeper and you want to get prepared for this course, learn more about it, get introduced more to their community and what all they have going on, like I said, visit dadsmarriedtodoctors.com/semi-retired MD, and I'll drop that in the comments. But Kenji, Leti, thank y'all so much. Thank you for being a phenomenal example to what the physician family can look like and what we can do with our kids while we're still paying off, student loans, and what we can do to really set ourselves up not only for the future but to enjoy life right now.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Oh man, thank y'all. Y'all have a great day. Well, I'll see you in the course.
That's right. Okay. Okay. Take care.
All right, bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye.